This item is the South Barrie Secondary School. Oft discussed. Councilor McCann, you held the item.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. So my plan tonight is to finish this debate once and for all and start construction on the school. I want the school built. My residents want their school built. And more importantly, students need their school built. Tonight I'm asking every council member to have an open mind. I'm going to walk you through my process, how I came up to my decision tonight. And at the end, hopefully, we're building a school.
So just before you do that, Councilor McCann, are you going to put, something needs to be put on the floor.
Oh.
Either the item is printed or one of the alternatives.
So I'm going to put item alternative 2.
Okay, alternative 2 is on the floor. Members of General Committee, go ahead, Councilor McCann.
Should I start from the beginning again?
No.
So I'm asking General Committee to vote yes to alternative number 2. Before I address Council, I'd like to briefly discuss my opinions on the school board and how they've handled themselves over the past little bit. You know, leaders are supposed to be flexible. Great leaders have the knack of making it a win-win for everybody involved. The school board has done a great job of doing the opposite of this. Inflexibility and sticking their heels in and only having it their way. Tonight's not the night for me to go into great detail of how I feel with the school board, but I want to touch base on what we've been dealing with over the past 18 plus months and give you some insight on who they are as a business and who they are to deal with. A non-Barrie trustee I had a conversation with a non-Barrie trustee, and this will dive into what we've been dealing with. And she made a comment to me that I've just never forgotten. And she told me that her number one priority was the school board, to protect the school board. And I thought this completely odd, because I thought the number one priority of the school trustee would be the betterment of the children. These are the decision makers that we're dealing with. My fear is that we offer the school board an olive branch to help them out, to do something better for them that would actually make it better for them and their students. They would still say no because they can. My fear is that the school board is going to run down a pile that they're going to waste taxpayers' time and money because they can. These are the people that we're dealing with. Council, I'm looking for your help. We've been united since the beginning, defending our planners' principles and policies. I'm asking you to stay united and vote yes to alternative 2 so our students can have a much-needed school. We have planned and are building a 21st century new brand of residence. And with this new plan comes new standards and new planning, or new standards of planning. So I have to ask myself, asking you to vote for alternative number 2, does this set a negative precedent for the rest of the builders? And I say no, it will not. The school is separate. These are passive parklands. It is not a concrete parking lot that we're facing other builders may face in the future. Why going to the OMB is just a choice I'm not willing to make. It's because it's a lose-lose for the residents, the community, and the City of Barrie. The OMB is in favor of the school board, well then we've just wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayers' money, and the taxpayers been hit twice. Once by paying legal for city staff and once for paying legal for the school board. And we waste time. Secondly, we win. The OMB is in favor of the school, or sorry, of City Hall. We still can lose. And this loss would even be harder and deeper. It's because the school board still has the right to say no. The school board is not binding, which means that even if the OMB says to the school board, you have to build the school the way the city says you have to build it, they can say, well, thank you, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pick up my school and I'm going to build it somewhere else. I'm not willing to risk this. My residents want a school. My students, or the students from Ward 10 and 9, need a school. So who loses and who wins here? Well, I'll tell you, the kids are going to lose. The taxpayers are going to lose because they're going to pay twice, and the community loses. And who will win if we go to the OMB? The lawyers. Leadership is not about running away from those who oppose you. It's about embracing them. Despite our differences with the school board, we are still a community. We must come together. Tonight, we have a chance, council members, to make this work. This just means we're going to have to work a little bit harder to develop our 21st century brand of new residents. This is a commitment that I am going to make. Vote yes to the Alternative General Committee, and let's get our students in the classroom. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Councilor McCann. Other comments? Councilor Ainsworth.
I'd just like to hear alternative 2. I can't seem to find it.
Alternative 2 is for General Committee to approve the second submission by the school board, which is in Appendix B. Well, it's actually not quite clear. It's the second submission revised and the second, second submission as revised. So the staff report says, paragraph 18, alternative 2, General Committee could approve the second submission as revised and direct staff to prepare site plan conditions to implement Council's decision. This alternative is not recommended as the proposed site plan does not meet city policy and design objectives. The appendix B, that's the site plan there. This is the one that shows the, it's Appendix B, Councilor Ainsworth. Comments, members of General Committee. Councilor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Through yourself to the clerk or deputy clerk, just wanted to inquire about the process of what options we have right now, considering the Councilor for Ward 8 is not present and part of his neighborhood section would possibly feed into the school, as well as we seem to have lost Councilor Silvera, whether for an urgent reason or not. I just don't think such an important vote myself, that's my opinion, right now can be done with 20% of the representatives missing. What are our options?
Mayor Lehman, through you to Councilor Morales, there is absolutely no legislative requirement why a vote couldn't be held at this point in time. You still have quorum for the meeting, and there's no legislative requirement why you couldn't hold a vote.
Are there any legislative tools to any member of council to defer, refer, any type of like that to a point where we can get, in our opinion, the satisfactory number of members?
There are always procedural tools. A motion could be put forward to defer this matter to a further meeting. However, I believe on the 13th you'll be missing at least 2 members at that point in time.
Thank you.
Okay, alternative 2 is on the floor. Comments? Councilor Ward.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Sorry, Councilor McCann, it's not going to be unanimous, so despite your wishes. I do have a question for staff, first of all, just for some clarity here about the Ontario Municipal Board. I take it even if this is passed tonight, that doesn't mean the matter won't go to the OMB. Developers, private citizens, they can all still go to the OMB on this matter. Is that correct?
Through you, Your Worship. No, the site plan application is relatively limited, so it can be appealed by the applicant or the landowner, but that is all.
I guess I'm asking because we have actually a letter on that in the correspondence tonight from an adjoining landowner who's upset with the plan. Now, what recourse would they have to try to get the lands graded to their satisfaction?
Through Your Worship, we're well aware that they have these concerns with the grading, so we would invite them into the process to make sure that they did have a discussion, and the school board has volunteered to discuss any grading concerns that they do have with the author of the report if tonight it's approved.
Okay, thanks. I'll just speak generally on it. I guess I just want to make it clear that we're at the stage we've reached now is entirely the school board's fault. I want to make sure that everybody knows that the city bears no blame. That school could have been open this fall if the school board had shown any flexibility, if they'd done the proper planning. We share none of the blame, so I'm not going to feel any guilt if it's delayed a few more months because we're going to the OMB. I don't think the city has the thing to, has any concerns that we've been partly to blame for this. I mean, it was the school board that decided to close a school before their new one was built, knowing that their new one wasn't going to be built in time. Every single argument the school board's put forward over the last 18 months has been false, not a word of truth. It was not a safety concern, and that was before. It was not a grading concern. The city bent over backwards to make sure that the grading wasn't going to be a concern for them. So every time they put up an argument, we've shown that it's not true, and they've still gone ahead and not. They had no intention of ever cooperating with the city to do it. I guess the thing that bothers me the most is that we've spent 6 years, gone to great time and expense and consultation to plan these lands in a different way. The annex lands were going to be done differently than than we've been developing over the years, and the school board has completely ignored our plans, completely. In fact, they've basically done the equivalent of stamping their feet and saying no. And it bothers me tremendously that we're proposing to reward childish behavior. The way you reward childish behavior is to say, yes, okay, we'll give you your way because we're tired of you kicking and screaming. It bothers me tremendously. I guess I can't see any upside on bringing this. I can't see any downside to bringing it to the OMB. There's a good chance that if we go to the OMB, the matter would be settled before we get there. Maybe they will see the light. Maybe something will happen. They could move the school outside of Barrie, but I don't think that's like, I'm going to take my ball and go home if you don't play. I mean, we're rewarding more bad behavior by saying, oh, yeah, we're going to give them their way because they're actually going to leave Barrie completely. It's a matter of principle, and I think if anybody had an item in their ward where they thought it was a matter of principle, if there was a 10-story building being built beside some single-family homes, and the city said they couldn't have it, and the developer said, I'm going to go to the OMB, we'd sort of say, yeah, we want to save that money. We don't want to spend money on lawyers fighting on a principle. We're going to let you go. We're going to let you do it. I think it's a principle worth defending, so I won't support the motion on the floor. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Ward. Councilor Prince. Councilor Perez.
Thanks, Mayor Lehman. I would just speak briefly to it, and I'm in the tough position of agreeing with everything that Councilor Ward says, with probably with an exclamation mark at the end of it. The challenge is looking downstream and understanding the impacts to our community, which we're responsible for. The school board is insulated in so many ways when these kids don't have an option for a school, or the school potentially is outside the city limits. It's not the trustees are going to call. It's not the superintendent. It's not the directors. It's going to be whatever members of council are sitting around this table. And that's the reality of it, because we're responsive and we're connected to our residents. And people 3 or 4 years from now, they aren't going to care about the one building that we wanted the school board to put beside the road. Or we wanted them to say they will do it, and they said we may do it, and we argued over will and may. Because at this point, we're really down to arguing over will and may. And I know for the school board, that probably is a great argument. But for us, it isn't. We argued with them and we fought with them over Central. The timelines, the impact to the city, the need to maintain it, they didn't care. They did what they wanted to do. They promised the school would be open when everybody told them they couldn't get the school open. They didn't care. They've gone through this process with a complete lack of genuine desire to resolve it, in my opinion. I would agree with Councilor Ward. And I don't think the 11 of us need to bash the school board. I think the history for them speaks for itself, and they can live with that. But I think today we have to decide whether we're going to try to move forward and extend a hand to get something resolved, or to argue over the principle of it. And where I do disagree with Councilor Ward is when you argue over the principle, both sides lose. There never is a winner. So it won't matter what the outcome is. And people down the road will be wondering, who made the decisions back then, and what were they thinking at the time? And I would like to be in a position to say, you know what? We were flexible through the process, as we're supposed to be. We held to a standard, but at some point we applied some flexibility, and we looked for a concession and a compromise. So tonight, I'm going to support the amendment on the floor, and I hope we get that school built, and I hope we've put the school board in a position to move forward. But speaking, using the analogy, the ball now is in their court. Assuming council passes this resolution, and we will look for them to hopefully move this community forward.
Councilor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I've been pretty consistent on this project, the time it's gone through. We've got a chance to get growth and construction and buildings we're gonna have to live with for decades, if not hundreds of years, correctly in the annex lands. I do understand the sentiment that, we have to have some leadership and think of the students. But again, it's been echoed again and again. It's a school board who's put us in this situation. I do not think that in the meantime, we need to compromise on the long-term infrastructure and the effects it's going to have in those neighborhoods in order to achieve some sort of short-term solution. Just like people are going to think back a couple of decades from now and hopefully say, look, the city was very reasonable in its dealings, what everyone's going to see every day is going to be those buildings. It's going to be the facilities that went against the staff recommendations for the new annex lands. I echo Councilor Ward's point. At this point, let's go to the OMB. There's a very possible solution that the school board will come to their senses before OMB. It'll get settled by then, where the DOMB correctly rules their cause. It really is frustrating. The school board has just kind of been playing circles, and I don't mince any words when I say that if a corporation, a private corporation, was run with the competency that the school board has run this project, that company would have gone bankrupt by now. So that's not the kind of person I think we need to make accommodations for. This is long-term infrastructure. It's the first parcel of land, essentially, that's going into these lands. And for myself, there's no compromise on this.
Thanks, Councilor Morales. Councilor Shipley.
Thank you, Your Worship. The most interesting word I think has been used tonight. It was just used by Councilor Morales, and that's frustration. No one around this table isn't feeling frustrated with this whole ordeal. I think that's kind of a good word to sum it up. But tonight, I think Councilor McCann has been willing to sort of phrase it this way, Councilor McCann, but throw down the gauntlet. It's time to extend the olive branch as you did and you worded, even though if the olive branch was a little sharpened on the end, but you still extended it, so job well done. Councilor Ward also used some words about fault and guilt, and it really comes down to it for me, Your Worship, is sometimes you just have to admit that sometimes the fight is done, and I'm done on this one. It's time to put the children first. It's time to get this school built. Someone has to say enough is enough. Do I wish it was going our direction? Yes. But really, it comes down to the residents in that end of town. The children, the parents have been waiting patiently. They don't follow this whole situation that's going on now for 18 months, 24 months. In fact, quite frankly, it's going on longer than that. I remember standing across the street from this site on our last term of council when we were initially looking at it, because we were talking about it for football fields at that time. And that goes back to our last term, Your Worship. Excuse me. So this has been going on way too long. And exactly, again, I want to say frustration is the key word. It's been very frustrating for everybody. I'll give Councilor McCann kudos. You held the fight for a long time. It takes a big man to sometimes turn and decide that let's put, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Councilor McCann, our emotions aside, our feelings aside, and do what's right down at the root and in our heart for the residents, for the children. I know this isn't going to make everybody happy, but tonight I'm going to be supporting Councilor McCann in his amendment on here and going with Section 2. It's probably not the best case scenario for everybody, but it is the only case that's going to get this school built. So let's all get together and do what's right for the kids and get this school built.
Councilor Ainsworth.
Thank you, Your Worship. I say shame on the school board, and I'm very disgusted to have taxpayers' money fighting taxpayers' money. We have better things to do in our community with the money. We need a school for these children in this neighborhood, and I think it's ridiculous. And anybody that has anything to say or do at the school board needn't hold their head up high tomorrow. I'm going to support this.
Thank you, Councilor Ainsworth. Anyone else? I got a couple things to say. So, in the early 1980s, when Barrie annexed a bunch of land from Innisfil, we set out a whole series of planning policies for those annexed lands, and they included that the Mapleview Drive area, then Molson Park Drive area, would be a business park. It would be industry and offices. And over the course of about 20 years, Council eroded its planning principles abandoned some of those policies. And the result is the #1 problem that we have in the south end of the city, traffic congestion on Mapleview Drive. There's a direct line from a series of planning decisions that abandoned our policies to the result that occurred. Now, is this one decision, whether or not we hold tight to our policies and defend them at the OMB or in some way compromise, going to cause that? No. But this is the very first development in the annex lands. There's been 5 years of effort to come up with the planning policies. And while I understand and I compliment a principled position that says put the kids first, because the school board sure isn't. I do understand that, Councillor McCann. I have for 10 years on council felt that one of the problems in Barrie is that we didn't hold to those planning policies. We didn't hold to those principles over the years. And it is a point of principle for me. And sometimes you got to stand up for your principles. And that means fighting, in this case, fighting to defend them at the OMB. Now, in terms of the context of what's happened here, and I know we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but this does need to be really clear. A compromise, there's been several attempts at compromise. And in our meeting directly with the school board leadership, there was a little bit of finger pointing at each other about who had not compromised enough. The reality is that we did reach an agreement in that meeting with the leadership, but the trustees rejected that agreement. The agreement, which is reflected, by the way, in Alternative 2. So for all of us at home, all of you at home wondering what Alternative 2 is and why we're all speaking so passionately about it, Alternative 2 would be that City Council approve the revised site plan from the school board. That includes a parcel at the northwest corner that would be for future development. And the reason that compromise was sought, and I agreed with that compromise in the meeting, was that it was a compromise. We moved off our position, or I did in that meeting, myself and since, of saying you must move your high school to the north end of the site or we're going to turn your application down and fight at the OMB. What we said was, okay, there's got to be a way to make this happen. We disagree that some of the reasons you can't move the school are valid. We disagree with the safety argument because we have stats to show that's just not true. We disagreed with the grading issue, but you know what? We said, okay, we've got to get the school built. So here's a compromise. Compromise is more in line with our planning principles than the original site plan submission, but not perfect. That's the nature of compromise. That was put to the trustees. And the request that went with it was a commitment that they would do it. We're not saying that they must build a building themselves, by the way, that they don't have to build some extra building just because we want an extra building and spend that money. The compromise agreement was either you do that if you have a need for it or a community partner that wants to build it, or surplus and sell that corner, which was agreed by the staff and the trustees in the meeting that the corner could be surplused and sold and it would in no way affect the viability of the high school. Surplusing and selling that site would be at least $500,000 benefit to the taxpayer. So here we are tonight, worried about courses of action that could cost tens of thousands of dollars in lawyers and witnesses. And I don't discount that that's a factor. You never take that lightly. But the compromise that was on the table was at least $500,000 to the benefit of the school board, not for us. So we're in this bizarre position where the effort was made, a solution was reached that frankly, I don't think was much of a win for the city, but it at least accomplished our planning policies to a greater extent than what is in front of us. For the school board, it meant either an additional building on the site, better use of the site, or at least $500,000 benefit to the taxpayers, who are our taxpayers as well. So, all of which to say, aside from the sort of principle versus principle argument, which I understand, Councillor McCann, why you're saying what you're saying, and Councillor Prowse, and I have to respect the argument that says we want to put the kids first because somebody's got to. I guess in response I would say that sometimes you also have to stick to your principles, and if we're going to have planning policies, we have to be willing to defend them and follow them, or we end up with problems. We end up with problems in our city resulting from not following planning policies. And I guess the point I wanted to make, and the reason I'm taking us through that compromise is, while I don't agree with alternative 2, and I believe it's worth fighting, I could get my head around it if we included an amendment that required the school board to provide assurance that that surplus and sale or that additional building in the corner would actually happen. Because that's what was on the table just 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago to solve this whole thing. Without it, I'm not willing to support the alternative. I believe that we could pass an amendment that, excuse me, if the will of General Committee is to approve the revised site plan submission from the board with the development piece at the corner. What gets me to yes on that is delegating authority to our staff to negotiate a condition of site plan approval that says, school board, you gotta give us something that says it's going to happen. Now, just to be upfront, they've already said no to that. Do I have much hope that they would say yes? I actually do, because now we would have approved the site plan with that condition attached. And to be frank, one of the problems in this whole process is with the public war of words, there is some belief that on either side that the other side's not going to follow their decisions, that they're not going to follow through. And I believe that if it is the will of General Committee, and I want to be very clear that I will not support this alternative without that amendment. But if it is your will, General Committee, to do that, then I would urge you to add the amendment to seek assurance that that actually will happen. Because otherwise, yes, it's shown on the plan, but I don't believe it is a compromise. I don't believe that the words that are being used here around flexibility or compromise are actually happening. I don't think the board is compromising at all. So that's my own position. If a member of council wishes to move an amendment to the for the purpose of seeking that assurance as a site plan condition, then I would probably feel differently about it. Councilor Ward.
Ask what your intentions there. Was it to have them, what kind of assurance that they would either develop themselves or sell and sever, and I'm not quite clear on.
So, yeah, and I think we need to recognize that we're not asking the board to build themselves another building. The language that was developed on this, and Councilor Ward, if you wanted to move it, or somebody wants to move it to put it on the floor, we can debate it. But the intention was that the school board, the language would be that the school board commit to the development of the lands shown as potential phase 2 development parcel, either through the construction of a building on the site by the board or a community partner, or by surplusing and selling the lands for the construction of a building by a private entity, such commitment to be in a form satisfactory to the CAO and Director of Planning.
Okay. Well, I will put it on there for, I mean, it would be great if we had a 100% vote, and when it comes back next week, we'll hear from the school board before that if they've, what they feel. So if they don't accept it, then we go back to the original one, and I can vote against it, but at least would allow me to vote. I think it would allow us all to vote in favor of it tonight.
Okay, so it's to one of you to put that amendment on the floor if you wish.
I'll put it on the floor. I'll put it on the floor, Jeff.
Okay. Heard Councillor Prince first. So just to be clear, staff have recommended some language here. And the language was that the site plan application, so paragraph 1 stays the same. Paragraph 2, the words that are added are the ones that I just read. So it says that staff prepare final site plan conditions to implement this decision, which are to include that the school board commit to the development of the lands shown as potential phase 2 development parcel, either through the construction of the building on the site by the board or a community partner, or by surplusing and selling the lands for the construction of a building by a private entity. Such commitment to be in a form satisfactory to the CAO and Director of Planning. Paragraph 3, staff had recommended that if we do that, we also exempt the school board from section 5.7 of the site alteration bylaw 2014-100, in order to secure a site alteration permit prior to the commencement of any works within the subject lands in accordance with bylaw 2014-100. So, Mr. Naylor, do you want to just explain why staff have recommended that additional paragraph on the site alteration bylaw?
Your Worship, currently the site alteration bylaw does not allow for site alteration on lands that are zoned agricultural. These lands are still zoned agricultural, so this would give the school board the ability to initiate the site alteration earlier in the process. As we heard through the negotiations, that was important for the timing of the school. So we would consent to recommending that.
Councillor Prince, are you happy with that wording?
On the floor. Yeah,
Okay,
I'm fine
so
with
that
that.
amendment's on the floor. On the amendment, Councillor McCann? Councillor Morales?
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Just had a question regarding the amendment. Does it have a specific timeline in which the school board would be required to do this? Over to either yourself or Mr. or Councilor
Ladd?
Through your worship to Councilor Morales, in our previous discussions with the school board about the timing, there was some suggestions about starting a process 2 years after the school was opened that allowed them to get the school constructed and have 2 years of operations under their belt before they went into another process to look at development. As the mayor has noted, that was not supported by the school board, but that is the kind of timing that we will likely discuss with the school board should they choose to proceed with this option.
Perfect. So, but in this scenario, it would be done by someone else, not the school board, since it's being surplus.
Through your worship to Councilor Morales, that would be entirely up to the school. I think the suggested wording by the mayor allows them to go either route, to either develop them themselves or to surplus, sell it, and have it developed by a private entity.
Is there any language in the amendment that puts, I don't want to say a cap, but what I'm thinking worst case scenario is they say, yeah, we'll do it in 2060. Is there any, minimum 2 years based on operations and up to, or is it the ambiguous within a reasonable time? Because we're dealing with an unreasonable party here.
It would be our intent to negotiate successfully something that would see a definitive time frame in order to achieve compliance with our policies.
Thank you.
Councillor Prince?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be brief. I put the amendment on the floor because I definitely support it. I think it will allow more members of council to also support this initiative, and I'd like to come out of this meeting with a message to the school board and some direction with as many members of council as possible. I don't want to be divided on this. I want to send a strong message to the school board in terms of what our position is. And that's exactly why I've asked to put this on the floor, and I thank you for that wording, and I urge other members of council to please support this.
Okay, on the amendment, other comments? Councillor McCann?
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I'm going to ask you for some clarity maybe on some processes in a minute. But have you ever heard the expression, first time, shame on you, second time, shame on me, right? The mayor and I and city staff have gone down many of these paths. And I really feel, Mayor, and I take zero pleasure on this, that this is a redundant process. That this is all it's going to do is going to confuse the issue, and the school board is going to say no and give them more ammunition. So I haven't made my decision up because as leaders, I want to be flexible. But to me, I just see the writing on the wall because I've been so involved in the past year. Now, there are some legal questions that I have for this, and I would like them answered and maybe to understand. Can we go on camera? Is that a process that is common?
Well, we try not to go in camera except when we absolutely have to, Councillor McCann, but to receive confidential solicitor-client advice, we are able to move in camera under the Act, and there is a pending litigation matter here because the school board has appealed. I'm just thinking, though, is Ms. Peters here? No. So at this time, we don't have the solicitor in the chambers to provide the answer to those questions. I guess I would remind you that we're at General Committee.
Yes.
So there is another week before this decision's ratified.
Okay, I'm fully understanding that. I guess the point I have right now is that I'm leaning towards not approving this. I'm going to hear the rest of council to see what their views are, just because I've got so much experience with the school board that I really believe this is a redundant point.
Okay, thanks, Councillor McCann. Councillor Ainsworth.
No, I'll just tag on to that. I find the amendment that you're putting on the floor, Your Worship, very technical and sort of, I didn't kind of grasp all of what you were trying to amend or change or convey to the school board that they needed to come back with. Could we not capsulize it better with just, 10 words or?
The wording came from staff.
Like it was quite a big story.
Yeah, well, I'll try and explain it. So the wording came from staff. The amendment specifically, if you look at the motion, under alternative 2, the intention would be to approve the board's revised site plan. So just to answer that question, Councillor Ainsworth, and I imagine there may be others who have this question, we are approving the site plan, okay? So that's on the floor. That's what Councillor McCann would like to do. He would like to simply approve the second submission. I'm not willing to just approve their second submission. The reason is it's exactly the same as the first submission, and I still have all the problems with it that I've had all the way along. What is different in their second submission is that the board, following our meeting, prepared and sent in a version of this that identifies a potential Phase 2 development parcel at the corner. And while it is not a perfect compromise, in the interest of getting the school built, I could agree to that site plan, much as that causes me great distaste and disappointment. I could get my head around it as a compromise if I had some assurance it was going to occur. But just drawing a dotted line on a map that says potential Phase 2 development parcel, to me just guarantees it's going to be landscaping and trees for the rest of time. I think what gets me to yes, so to speak, on this is the notion that after a long, drawn-out battle and discussion, the school board, at fiscal benefit to themselves, to the tune of $500,000 or more, who are also our taxpayers, would surplus and sell the corner, and we know that does not affect the functioning of the school. It's pretty clear on the map. So the amendment, Councillor Ainsworth, paragraph 3 was kind of technical, was exempting the board from a site alteration requirement to allow them to start building right away. So the only point of that third paragraph was, if this works, if they accept it, then they can get going right away. The real guts of the amendment here, though, are to delegate authority to our CAO and Director of Planning to talk with the staff. Let's get this out of the public and political arena, because I don't think we're getting anywhere. Let's let the staff go and sit down, armed with the knowledge that the city has approved the site plan, approved it, which we have never done, and I see that as an enormous compromise, but requiring the board to commit to surplusing and selling that parcel for development. And if they do that, aside from getting $500,000, which ain't bad, or whatever they actually get for the value of that land, I believe it's at least something that fulfills our planning principles and policies to a greater extent than what was considered before. So that's why I think the amendment is so important. I don't know if that explained it any better. Okay. Other comments on the amendment? Councilor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman, and I don't usually ask this of you. I usually ask you the other thing, but please do cut me off if at any point you do feel it is appropriate. I want to comment on...
I'm sorry, we're out of time.
Funny. I've got at least 2.5 years left. That wasn't aggressive. I was trying to be friendly. That could have come off aggressive. Don't worry. Thank you, Mayor Lehman. So when Councillor Prince put this amendment forward, he used a word that kind of stood out, and he said he wants unity on this. And I've been very principled on this. The school board goes in the front. no compromise. The school front goes in the front. You knew the plans. You got the funds in 2012. What were you doing? Do your homework properly. Don't come ask for exemptions. That said, as Councilor McCann's put, there are students in play. And I'm not going to repeat all the points that you've said to this, but I'm just tired of playing games. And I wasn't going to say this earlier, but Councilor Ainsworth, I very much enjoyed your passionate comment about it. And I'm actually very upset now because a couple of weeks ago, and I wasn't going to say this, a member of the school board told me that they were going to put a complaint to the Integrity Commissioner on myself because through social media, I used the word that you used, and it was, I'm disgusted. I said I was disgusted with the decision that the school board made. I didn't label any individual. I said that is disgusting to the school board. And I was contacted, at least I was given a heads up, that a complaint was going to be put forward to the Integrity Commissioner for me. For somebody to come and tell me that they are going to put a complaint on the integrity of me using my public office to do that is not appropriate. You've done this yourself, and as it relates to this amendment, I am done with playing games. That was a power move that was attempted on me to silence me, and it seems that this is finally, hopefully, a proper alternative that we can find a balance. So I'm not going to play a game, a symbolic game, by being the only member of the council to vote no. Councilor Prince, if this works, let's go for it. Let's achieve the unity. And the reason I'm going forward with this is two specific reasons. If we can allocate that piece of land, and whether it's the school board, a private institution, ourselves, and somebody develops it, I believe it still meets some sort of requirement within the planning requirements to have a building up. It may not be the school, but it still adheres to that. That's a compromise. Another concern is whether it was for an emergency reason or something else, having Councilor Silveira not be here at the vote when he was here, to me, is very concerning. As Councilor McCann said, this needs to be a united vote. And since we have no explanation, putting this forward does buy us that time to either get an explanation back or get another member of council. I know the city clerk said we might be missing other people, but that is also, to me, something of concern. We have to make this decision together. Thank you.
Okay, on the amendment, members of General Committee. Councilor Ainsworth. Oh, wow, that was just all over that. Okay, questions, comments on the amendment. Councilor McCann, then Councilor Prince.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. So I just want to make it very clear here. Barrie had mentioned, Councilor Ward had mentioned that if we give this proposal to the school board and the school board says no, that doesn't cost us any time. We can still vote next week at City Council the way we'd want to vote.
Well, I guess, Councilor McCann, it would depend on when a no or a yes is received.
So then how do I
guess, just maybe further color on that, though. Let's be clear. The board's already appealed this. The appeal doesn't go away, right? So they appealed our original denial. If we, tonight, choose to approve the second site plan submission, the board may or may not abandon its appeal. And if we add the condition, they also may or may not abandon their appeal. Are the chances greater or lesser if we add the amendment? Yes, I believe we are asking them to actually commit to a course of action. So does that come with a greater chance that they could say no? Perhaps. But I think the other thing that needs to be very clear about this amendment right now, the compromise that's on the table is fiscally positive to the school board and to the taxpayer at a very significant amount of money. If the alternative is approved, council has approved their site plan. There is no reason left at all, for them to say no. They cannot possibly justify saying no. Can anyone around this table, can anyone in the community give me a reason why you would not take a course of action that proceeds with building the school, proceeds with the site plan you have submitted, and makes you at least $500,000 in benefit? I can't think of a reason. Now, maybe they'll find one, and we'll be disappointed, Councilor McCann. But the reason I'm standing so hard on this compromise is I feel we've gone an awfully long way. This compromise benefits the taxpayer it gets the school built now. I cannot fathom a reason why we cannot resolve this issue with this course of action. So go ahead, though, Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. And just noted your passion is definitely great to see, but that's not really what I was asking. What I'm asking is whether the school board votes yes or no to the amendment, right? I want to make sure the school gets built. And I don't want this amendment getting in the way of next week us voting yes to approve the school plan. So therefore, I agree with you wholeheartedly that this would be a ridiculous statement for the school board to say no, but I just don't understand their logic. And I'm now not wanting to understand their logic. I just want a school built. So the question I have, very simple question, is that right now, if we vote to bring this amendment through and they shut down this amendment, I don't want this to be a roadblock next week when we go to City Council. Will this be a roadblock, or can we turn around and go back to the point here? Is this the point of no return?
Sorry, Councillor McCann, but we're long past that.
No.
No, I'm answering your question. The board appealed our original decision back from the fall. So the only people here who can decide whether or not to withdraw that appeal is the school board. We don't control that timing. So if that occurs after Monday of next week, then it's going to occur after our decision. If your question is, does the amendment increase or decrease the chance of the board withdrawing its appeal, I can't answer that for you.
No, that's
My
not what
guess
I'm
is
asking.
it probably does.
No, that's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking for, you put an amendment forth, right? And I don't want that amendment to be a roadblock for next week. So I want the school, right now, if we vote yes, then the school board has got a green light to build their school. That's what I want. I also want what you want, but I don't want your amendment to give fuel to the school board or give them decision to vote no, that they're still going to go to the OMB. I want them not to go to the OMB.
We're already going to the OMB.
No, but they can retract. So if we're going to give them what they want, Carla, then chances are they're going to say no, right? Well, if you're giving what they're
okay,
asking for, then
so,
they're
all
not
right.
going to say yes to it.
I'm not going to use my gavel for the first time this term, but I'd like some order. There's an amendment on the floor. The issue here is, Councillor McCann, you want the board to withdraw their appeal to the OMB, and you want us to approve the site plan and for the board to get going building the school. That's what you would like to happen.
Tonight, I want to vote yes to the school board to the site plan approval. Whether that's their business. If I was a guessing man, I would say that they would.
So I'm trying to answer your question.
Gotcha.
On procedure here. I think what's on the floor right now is an amendment that requires them to commit to as a condition of approval. So what would happen if we approved this tonight is it would be communicated to the school board after next week, but I'm sure it will be they'll be quite aware of it after tonight. Yeah. That council has approved their site plan as revised, but that one of the conditions of those approval, there's typically in a site plan dozens of conditions related to all sorts of functional matters, grading, drainage, all those other things. One of those conditions would be that they demonstrate to our CAO and our Director of Planning a commitment to surplusing and selling that building at the northwest corner or building on it themselves, following through on the discussion that was occurred previously.
Perfectly put. I guess what I'm asking for, can we make sure this happens within 6 days?
No, we have no ability to control that. It's entirely up to the school board.
No, do we have the ability to present this to them in the next 6 days and say we need an answer within 6 days?
If I had to guess, I'm guessing they're watching at home, but I'm quite positive that we can communicate the results of tonight's meeting, including the motion, to the school board tonight, let alone
just for the record, we're not building a rocket ship here.
On the amendment, Councilor Ward.
I just want to say further to that. I mean, they've already appealed to the OMB, and there'll be lots of time between now and then for them to say, they may not say within 6 days, but They can say it in 2 weeks. They can say it in 3. I mean, we often, as you know, we've had meetings to say, we know it's been pre-discussions before we go to the OMB, and we've reached a compromise. Here it is. And so we can call a special meeting in the summer to come back and approve any kind of a compromise that's reached. I don't think we're delaying things by doing this. And I don't think we have to have an answer. You're welcome to put on any amendment you want next week, but I don't think you have to. We have to hear from the school board within the next 7 days, because there'll be a negotiating process, and we'll know, and we can do that. If you want to put on a motion, we can call a special meeting anytime in the summer to discuss what the OMB is thinking. I want to make it clear that, I'm not doing this because I'm trying to save some face. I really do think, part of our principles was that we were going to have buildings up against the roads, the major roads. I mean, that's the principle here, and if it's, the idea would be to have to have the school there. The school board's made it clear that you don't want to put a school by the road, so this is another building. It's not just, the school board's still stuck in this 1950s way of planning. They've never really, it's an unhealthy way of planning. I just came from a conference today, a public health conference, where they all talked about the need for planning. It's so important that when you plan cities now to make them healthier. Part of it making healthier is to put buildings near the road. So that's why, for me, it's very important that we do put a building near the road. It'd be great if it was a school. If it's not the school, it's something else. But it gives a presence on that corner. It will make it much more walkable. It just changes that whole area, rather than having this vast field at one of the major intersections in that area. So anyways, we have lots of time for the school board to say yes or no. We don't have to have an answer, in my mind, by next week.
Councillor Shipley.
Thank you, Your Worship, and quite frankly, once again, just sitting here listening for a while is proof positive just how toxic this has become. Very emotional for everybody, and you have to sit back. Hopefully, maybe some people go home and rewatch this, and you can tell emotion's playing a large part in this, and it is on both sides now, Your Worship. So, my words from what I said earlier are becoming more and more true now. It's just getting frustrating, and this has become a toxic side on both sides. And got to get through this. I have Councillor McCann's same concerns. I was content with, or not, I don't even want to use the word content. I was, had sold myself, maybe sold my soul, unwilling to agree to Councillor McCann's, the alternative number 2. I have concerns now about, I will use the words muddying it a little bit to me with an amendment. We're in or we're out. I think there was a lot of debate here. I think there's both sides. I don't know how the vote's going to go, Your Worship, but I think on the amendment, I have concerns that it's just going to keep the wheels spinning again. And we're going to be back here again next week. And then, as Councilor Ward said, we're probably going to be back here again sometime in the summer, because we can't hold their feet to the fire and get their answer by Monday. And there's not going to be any resolution again. So I agree. I would hope they would withdraw their filing at the OMB once and if we approve this. I mean, if they didn't, I have concerns with them already. I would have even greater concerns then, as should all citizens. And as Councilor Morales mentioned, in 2.5 years, we maybe have to look at a whole issue there. But they have, to approve what they're looking for and then not withdraw that from the OMB would just be mind-boggling. And some things that have happened already on this whole project and this file have been a little mind-boggling. But I have concerns, too, about muddying the waters with this amendment. I just think it's going to prolong it. I think it's going to drag it out some more. I think tonight's the night we either say yes or no, and as much as it's, I keep hearing about a unity and all together, I don't know since when we all need to be unity. I think a majority is usually what wins votes. Unity's nice, but majority is the way we work around here. So I keep hearing we all got to be together, we all be unified. How about we just go with a majority and we live with it? That's part of our whole concept of being on council. Sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose ones, but tonight, I'm sorry, Your Worship, I don't think I can support the amendment just because I think it's going to slow it down again. And as I said earlier in my earlier speech, I don't want it slowed down anymore. I want it done right. If we can't get it done right, let's at least get it done. So I'm not going to be able to support your amendment tonight, Your Worship. I'm sorry.
Okay, unless there are further comments on the amendment, I'd like to call the question on the amendment. Councillor Prince? Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just really quickly, and I will not belittle this, again, the reason I supported the wording that the mayor put forward is because I'm extremely on the fence with this. I agree with Councillor Ward. I agree with Councillor Prowse, and I think this is a very fair compromise. I will also urge members of committee to not bow down to personal attacks over social media. Do not make this issue a personal one and think with a cool, calm, collected head. if I had bowed down and to personal attacks during the second half of my first term, I probably wouldn't have supported a damn thing. So let's think clearly on this. Let's come up with something that's a fair compromise, and let's move forward. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call the question on the amendment. The amendment that's on the floor, just to recap, Alternative 2 was put on the floor as the main motion. The amendment is the additional wording to require as a condition of site plan approval that the school board provide assurance to staff, so it's a staff level, not our decision, but delegate to staff the authority to negotiate the commitment to surplusing or development on the northwest corner. Okay, on the amendment, those in favor of the amendment? Those opposed? Okay, the amendment fails. On the main motion as amended. So you know where I am, I'm out. My comment on the main motion, sorry, not as amended, the main motion is the alternative. You've got to stand on your principles, members of council. I understand the desire to get the school built, but planning principles are there for a reason, planning policies are there for a reason, and as Councilor Ward says, you're just rewarding 18 months of bad behavior.
Hear, hear.
Are there any other comments? Okay, I'll call the question on the motion. Those in favor? Opposed? I'm opposed, but it still passes.
Separate report?
Separate report's been requested. 2 members away. So, for those following our home game, that did pass by 1 vote and 2 members are away. I cannot predict how those members might feel, but I would urge anybody following this issue to remember that it will be ratified next week. Who knows how that may go. Councillor Ainsworth?
Yes, and Your Worship, with all due respect, I would just like to go on record that because I stand for my principles and they're not the same as yours, does not mean that I'm also standing for mine.
No, nor did I say that, Councillor Ainsworth, but to be clear, the discussion, you know what, I'm not going to continue the debate. I think I understand your point. Thanks for your comment. Okay, the next item that was held was the community safety zone on Sundew Drive.